Hi, my name is Robert Denley, and I'll be closing out the discussion of a warfarin dose estimation based on a pharmacogenetic approach. And I will be talking about a warfarin dosing tool based on the algorithm discussed by Jonathan in the previous slide set. And I'll just give you a quick overview of what I'll be talking about. I'll give an overview of the dosing tool itself. Go ahead and do a walkthrough of the dosing tool, some conclusions, and some references. So the dosing tool is a web-based tool located at warfarindosing.org. This tool is actually created by the authors of the paper, or the algorithm that Jonathan discussed. It was originally based on an algorithm developed by Gage et al. It's been refined by including the findings in the IWPC algorithm, and since then, actually, since that paper was published, they've included additional genotype effects on warfarin metabolism in the tool. So just to remind you, in this tool, it actually includes these clinical aspects, which has been known before. And then, as Jonathan talked about, they generated with a linear regression, they created these coefficients to account for the various genotype effects of these two enzymes. And to remind you of our hypothetical patient, which I'll be entering into the warfarin tool, it's a 50-year-old Caucasian male with a deep vein thrombosis, 175 centimeters tall, weighing 80 kilograms, and not taking any medications that would affect warfarin metabolism. And what Jonathan found in his calculation was that the clinical and pharmacogenetic algorithm with no variance predicted a relatively high amount of warfarin per week for this patient, but accounting for the two enzyme variants that this patient possesses, which actually allude to very poor warfarin metabolism, it recommends a much lower dose per week to account for that fact. And now I'm going to go ahead and take you through the tool walkthrough. So you see here, this is warfarindosing.org. This is the initial web page that you come to, or the initial screen you see. Over on the left, you'll see some other information here. These clinical trial and outcomes in hemorrhagic risk, or other trials that the research group is completing using the algorithms. There's a glossary and some references as well. And what we're actually going to be doing is using this with an existing patient that I created, who's warfarin naive, which is what I'm doing here. And this is just to speed up the process of entering in the information on the next page. But if you are a new clinician coming here, new with a new patient, you can create a new patient here. You maybe put an MRN here for the patient code to go ahead and create a document for their chart. So we'll go ahead and continue here. And the next page, we see the inputs for the algorithm. And if you look up here in this top part, this is essentially the clinical algorithm, which is based on demographics, height and weight, as well as if they're taking any other medications that can affect warfarin metabolism. And then down below we have any genetic information you might have about this patient, or especially about the enzymes that could cause warfarin metabolism to be altered, and thus the dose to be altered. And so I'll just walk you through this real quick. If you remember, our patient's a 50-year-old male, Caucasian, 80 kilograms, 175 centimeters tall. These are converted by JavaScript to imperial units. He's not a smoker or have liver disease. His indication is DVT. His baseline INR is 1, which is normal. And his target INR, which we hope to achieve with the warfarin, is 2.5. which actually falls, within the range of the patient studied for this research study. The other thing to note is that this patient doesn't have any warfarin metabolism altering medications or concomitant medications that can affect that. And then for this patient, if you remember that this patient has a vitamin K epoxide reductase complex 1 mutation as well as a cytochrome P450 mutation shown here. So essentially what you would do is you go ahead and you can pick the alleles for each one of these genes, for each one of these enzymes. And in this case, if you remember that the vitamin K epoxide reductase, patients who have the AA genotype, like this patient, are the most warfarin sensitive and therefore often require much lower warfarin doses than the wild type. And the cytochrome 450 subfamily 2C polypeptide 9 represented here. This patient actually, if those who carry at least one copy of the CYP2C9 asterisk 3, like this patient, have extremely slow metabolism of warfarin. So this will actually lower the dose even more due to the algorithm. Just briefly, I'll touch upon the other enzymes listed here on this algorithm. The CYP4F2 is the cytochrome P450 family 4 subfamily F polypeptide 2, and those carriers with a C to T transition have reduced function, resulting in approximately 8% increase of warfarin dose. So in this case, the cytochrome 450 is actually less capable of metabolizing, so we'd have a decrease in dose there. And the GGCX that you see here is a gamma glutamyl carboxylase, and each G allele actually is associated with a 6% reduced warfarin dose. So go ahead and accept the terms of use, and we'll go ahead and estimate the warfarin dose for this patient. Now we see that we get an initial mini loading dose of 3.8 milligrams and a therapeutic dose of 1.7 milligrams per day, and this is actually through their initially developed algorithm. To get the IWPC estimate, we have to actually click here, and we have a page here that just tells us if we have any other medications that can affect warfarin metabolism, which we don't for this patient. And then it's just reminded me down here that the algorithm was developed and validated in patients with an INR between 2 and 3, and our patient has 2.5, so this should be a valid estimate for our patient. So we'll go ahead and continue. And now you see that the IWPC estimated therapeutic dose of 1.1 milligram per day, which is the same thing that Jonathan came up doing the algorithm manually, and that's actually the 7.7 milligrams of warfarin per week. And what we can do here is actually, this can help create a prescription if we wanted to. We can go ahead and adjust this dose slider if we wanted to for the initial prescription for the patient. Here we can also have a reminder sent to the clinician, which is me in this case, in about 70 hours to check the INR and then adjust the dose appropriately. And this is just talking about some of the recommendations from the studies that this algorithm is based on. And down here you just see this is where it's going to email any additional results for me. So I can go ahead and click that. And here it's going to talk about to remind me to check the INR value between the 3rd and 4th warfarin dose. And we can actually return back here to this tool, enter the INR value, and it will then refine the warfarin dose based on the INR values after the first 2 doses. And I can actually show you real quick what that email looks like. This is the email that arrives, dear Dr. Dunley, and then we go down and it just reviews again the information that you give, and then gives you some dose estimations, and then it also provides other information about the references and things like that. So very useful. And I hope that you'll find this useful explanation of this tool. Thanks. And so that concludes the walkthrough at warfarindosing.org. I suggest you take a look at it yourself and see how it works. And that also concludes our demonstration of warfarin dose estimation. Kurt gave a little bit of background on warfarin. Farron talked about traditional dosing challenges of warfarin. Jonathan talked about the value of pharmacogenetic approaches, and I just gave you a tool walkthrough. And I hope what you get out of this series of presentations is that bioinformatics can be very cerebral and a bit nerdy at times, but really the results of bioinformatics can have real effects through clinical applications such as this. And I thank you for your attention, and I'll go ahead and just give you the references here, which will also be on our wiki, and have a good day.